Well, this is like something out of a horror movie. Farmers across the country are reporting an increase in ticks appearing on their farms. And this has been going back a few years, but at least over the past 6 months, it's been increasing specifically. And now focus on these Lone Star tick bites, where if you get bit by one of these Lone Star ticks, it has the ability to alter your tolerance for eating meat. How convenient. So get bit by one of these and suddenly you develop a meat allergy, a red meat allergy. In 2016, and I know this sounds crazy, right? It absolutely sounds crazy until you realize that the U.S. government in declassified CIA documents was using ticks, Lyme disease as a bioweapon, of course, to drop on Cuba and other places. So that's where this came from. Will we ever get an investigation into it? I know members of Congress have tried. That's been stonewalled. But just to go back to the Lone Star tick piece here for a second, in 2016, World Economic Forum bioethicist named Matthew Liao talked about this and talked about how, we eat too much meat. We're eating too much meat. And a way to make us healthier is to make us allergic to meat through human engineering so they wouldn't eat as much. And he specifically talks about, yes, this Lone Star tick. Watch.
But so here's the thought, right? So it turns out that we know a lot about, we have these intolerance to, for example, I have milk intolerance. And there's some people are intolerant to crayfish. So possibly we can use human engineering to make it the case that we're intolerant to certain kinds of meat, to certain kinds of bovine proteins. And there's actually analogs of this in life. There's this thing called the Lone Star tick, where if it bites you, you'll become allergic to meat. I can sort of describe the mechanism. So that's something that we can do through human engineering. We can kind of possibly address really big world problems through human engineering.
Oh, great. So we have a huge problem that people are just eating meat. That's the problem. Only I wish Bill Gates were around with his fake meat products that we could eat, and he could somehow be involved in this entire thing. Oh, wait, he is. And then we have, of course, documents, and as Robert Malone, who was part of the MAHA movement inside the Trump administration, posting just even a few weeks ago, the documents in his Substack, declassified documents link the U.S. bioweapons program to Lyme disease outbreak using these radioactive ticks. And, of course, all this information has been suppressed for 40 years. So what is going on with all of these farmers and this increase in ticks? And what's going on with the MAHA movement right now? Well, Del Bigtree is the former communications director for the Kennedy campaign, host of the High Wire. He was outside the Supreme Court today for the Monsanto versus Durnell hearing, which is a huge battle right now between the DOJ and the MAHA movement. And we're thrilled to have Del on the show. Great to see you.
Good to see you, too. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. So can you talk about, we're going to get to what you saw today at the Supreme Court and all of that in a moment, but I want you to address like what we're seeing here. And, for those people that think, oh, this is a conspiracy that farmers are seeing an increase in ticks on their farms. What do you know about this?
Well, I always get concerned. I mean, on both sides of this conversation, as you've pointed out, you have the World Economic Forum, you have leaders around the world saying that essentially no one should be eating meat. You'll all be renters. We need to reduce the population. I always say we should take these people very seriously when they make these statements. So you look at the desire to have us stop eating meat and dairy products and, animal products while Bill Gates is funding lab-grown meat and things like that. Then you see this tick-borne illness. It's called alpha-gal. So if you get bit by this tick, suddenly you're allergic to meat and dairy products. That's alarming. It does make you think, did someone do this on purpose? In a world of bioweapons, was this a bioweapon that was created? Is it something that goes back to nature? We'll never get the full story on that. But I also think on top of this story is right now there's a huge push to sell Lyme disease vaccines. It's the same vaccine that's failed for over a decade, but now they're really going to push for it. So when I see a market that's trying to sell a product and suddenly I see a problem bigger than I've ever seen it, I start getting really suspicious. Are there more ticks on farms? I think there'd be a lot of investigation to figure out whether that's true or not. But all you need is 3 or 4 farms to say, I've seen more ticks than ever, or saying it looks like, there's boxes of ticks that are showing up everywhere. Whether that's true or not, you send people into a panic. And what we do when we're in a panic, suddenly we go out, we want to protect ourselves. So I always, step back. I don't know what the reality is here. Maybe we will never know, but something stinks. It reminds me of COVID. COVID, they wanted to panic everybody. Ultimately, the death rate of COVID was a bad flu season, about 0.35%. But boy, it gave them an excuse to go out and get everyone to get a brand new vaccine technology, for us to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in a new technology, which I think is a total failure, the mRNA vaccine technology. But when you see market forces and a market desire at the same time, there's suddenly an issue that needs that product, I get really skeptical.
No, you're right about that. And to your point, will we ever know the answer, whether they've manipulated these Lone Star ticks to create this allergy to red meat? We won't. Maybe we will. Right now, you have members of Congress. Representative Smith, I think specifically, has been calling for this, at least at late last year, to get some eyeballs on the Lyme disease creation as a bioweapon. I mean, we literally have documents showing that it was created as a bioweapon. And you have Robert Malone, of course, Dr. Malone, confirming as such, being on the inside of the Trump administration as part of the MAHA movement. Listen to him answer this, just a few seconds of this. Listen.
Did we actually use ticks as bioweapons?
Yes, it's actually in CIA documents that have been declassified. For instance, infected ticks were deployed from C-130s flying low over sugarcane fields in Cuba back in the day under President Kennedy. There is abundant evidence of the testing, field testing, of infected ticks and other insects in a variety of settings in the United States and elsewhere. Clearly, USAMRIID was involved, and in particular, the Plum Island facility that had been a biowarfare investigative facility up in Manhattan, Long Island region, and then was transferred over to USDA, was involved in a lot of this research.
Absolutely confirmed. So we do know that that's the case. And now you bring up the great point about now pushing a Lyme disease vaccine. Very convenient to create. I think you bring up a great point to create this like public fear about Lyme disease, but they literally created the thing they're now going to solve.
Well, you even have Dr. Marty McCary, who's your, active FDA director, saying that Lyme is a bioweapon that was created. So, I mean, at least under this administration, we're hearing things that have never been admitted to before, and that's a little bit refreshing, especially, in the cabinet and the people that Robert Kennedy Jr. has brought in, including Dr. Robert Malone, putting him on the Advisory Committee of Immunization Practices, putting Marty McCary in the position of FDA. So it's great to be hearing this information. But again, I think we have to watch, that we take in this information, but that it doesn't send us into a panic, because fear really is what, the globalist system, I would say, around the world uses to control us. And if they can make us afraid, even if it's, afraid of nature, then we will do all sorts of things, because, that's how manipulated, the system is, how we are. So I always say, look, be careful when you go out hiking. But that's always been the case. You know what I mean? Wear long pants and socks. And, you can look up online. There's plenty of YouTube videos on, the diet you can take, the things you can eat and drink to repel and make your body less prone to be attractive to ticks. And, certainly watch your dogs when they come in. But those are things we've always been doing. Pharmaceutical industry would like you to believe injecting yourself is the easiest way around it. They're never going to tell you the side effects. They're never going to tell you can get Lyme from the vaccine itself. And lots of people will go out and get it. I'll tell you, that's a very dangerous vaccine. It was recalled at one point because it made people so sick. They haven't fixed it. They're just coming back with a greater fear campaign, hoping that that cacophony of sound on fear of ticks overwhelms people trying to talk about their injury from vaccines. And look, the television's been really good at avoiding that topic.
No, you bring up a great point, which is they haven't even fixed it, and they're pushing this new fear campaign and propaganda and trying to tell and marketing campaign to have you go and get this. You'll see the signs. I mean, you just walk into a Walgreens and you'll see signs for it's Lyme, it's Lyme disease season. Watch out for ticks. You might want to get your Lyme disease vaccine, get your flu, get your COVID shot all simultaneously. Which brings me to your MAHA point, or being there today at the Supreme Court. These are the things we were promised we wouldn't have to deal with anymore. Like the MAHA movement in a large capacity. We had Dr. Robert Malone on a few weeks ago talking about the people who are setting up the roadblocks inside the administration. And there's all sorts of course, big interests that are trying to prevent these things from happening. But your battle today at the Supreme Court there, Monsanto versus Durnell, can you walk us through what were the arguments and what did you see today?
Well, I wasn't inside the Supreme Court listening to the arguments. I was outside standing with just a beautiful group of people from all walks of life. Every race, religion, creed was represented. Democrats and Republicans stood side by side on this issue, which is the Supreme Court is trying to essentially give liability protection to is looking at giving liability protection to Monsanto Bayer on glyphosate. This is a product that has already paid out nearly $11 billion to over 100,000 plaintiffs. That's how bad this product is. There's hundreds of thousands of more plaintiffs lined up. And I want to make it clear, this isn't a brand new phenomenon. I reported on this when I used to be a producer on the daytime talk show The Doctors. Back in 2015, IARC, which is an international agency on the research of cancer, it's a WHO organization. They had a 2-week symposium in 2015 bringing in scientists from all around the world, allowed Monsanto to provide all of the scientists they needed to defend the product, and their conclusion was that glyphosate is probably carcinogenic to human beings. That's an actual rating. It's the second highest cancer rating IARC has, second to only to does cause cancer. So for over 10 years, we've known this product causes cancer, and then we started seeing the Dwayne Johnson cases paying out hundreds of millions of dollars for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. This is a terrible product, and what's crazy in America is instead of evolving that product or going back to the drawing boards and making a better product, once a product is so entrenched in lawsuits, instead of fixing it, it goes to the government and says, hey, protect us from liability. I think in this case, it's very similar, by the way, to an issue that happened in 1986 to the vaccine program. It's one of the things I speak a lot about, the 1986 Vaccine Injury Compensation Act. The same thing happened. Back in 1986, the pharmaceutical industry said, we are losing, this is their quote, we are losing so much money from death and injury cases in court, we cannot make a profit. So they blackmailed Ronald Reagan and said, we're going to stop making all vaccines unless you protect us from liability. He hated the idea, but he felt stonewalled, and he was also worried as we were entering the biological age. We were leaving the fear of nuclear weapons and moving into bio-warfare weapons. Well, if we were attacked, he wanted to have vaccine plants up and running and working so you could make vaccines is one of the things he would do, like we saw with COVID. Want to be able to warp speed. He predicted that back then. And so he gave in and gave liability protection to the manufacturers of vaccines. And our vaccine program exploded. And that same explosion, we've watched the greatest decline in human health ever recorded. And as my nonprofit has won lawsuits against the government, we've proven that there's never been a saline placebo-based trial of any of the childhood vaccines prior to licensure. It is skipping safety review. Why? Because it doesn't need to do it. It can't be sued. So what difference does it make? It doesn't care about safety. So here we are, modern times, now in 2026. What did Bayer Monsanto do? It is saying the same thing. We are losing so much money from these death and injury cases, we can't make a profit. So here's what they did to Donald Trump. We are going to pull glyphosate, which is used by 90% of farmers and 90% of our crops across America. We're going to take it away from them, and we're going to devastate your farming industry. We're going to shut it down unless you stockpile this product in America and you protect us from liability. So unfortunately, I think we thought that Donald Trump had the type of ego and strength to stand up against those, sort of corporate pressures, blackmail, if you will, the deep state, whatever you want to call it. But here we see even he drops to his knees when a too big to fail corporation threatens him on that level. And so today, we had Department of Justice lawyers going into the Supreme Court, not on behalf of the citizens of America, but on behalf of a German corporation, Bayer Monsanto. I think that's unbelievable. The Department of Justice lawyers, who are supposed to be fighting for justice for Americans, they are funded by us. They work for us. This is a government that is supposed to be of, for, and by the people, not of, for, and by the corporations. So I think Donald Trump has really made a misstep today. He's done a lot of great things with MAHA. I think Robert Kennedy Jr. is the most successful HHS secretary we've had in my lifetime. I would say he's achieved more in 1 year than every HHS secretary all put together in my life. He's removed heavy metals from baby food and formulas. He's cleaned up the food supply. He's, turned the food pyramid upside down and gotten rid of ultra-processed foods as being even on the food pyramid. He's working on getting healthy food, real food, into school systems. He just passed psychedelics and worked with Robert Kennedy Jr. to get out there and get psychedelics looking at for PTSD and neurological issues. He's got investigations now, Trump signing on to investigate forever chemicals and PFAS and all of these microplastics. So we're seeing a lot of great work. And he even reduced our vaccine program down, something that I was really excited about, switching us over to mirror the Denmark-Germany schedule, which was about 26 vaccines instead of the 54 vaccines. Unfortunately, that's been overturned by a lawsuit by the American Academy of Pediatrics. So you see the attacks upon Bobby. You see the work that he's attempting to do. But he's entrenched. He's entrenched in, I think he lacks the type of support even inside of HHS. You got 50,000 employees there that may not be working in your best interest. So my heart goes out to Bobby. I think he's doing the best he's doing. And I really want to congratulate Trump on the great things he's done for the MAHA movement. But today is not a great day. I think it's horrible to see a man who considers himself, a businessman in Donald Trump and said he would run this country like a business. I think most businessmen in America appreciate our free market system. But today, what you have is the Department of Justice trying to give liability protection. That destroys the free market. One of the pillars of free market is our ability to sue when a product hurts us. In fact, most libertarians would prefer that courts stay open and we'd be able to sue more than going to regulatory agencies to fix everything. As long as we can sue if it hurts us and everyone can hear about those lawsuits, then we know that we'll force corporations to better products. But when you take that, that market force away, you are destroying not only democracy, you're destroying capitalism. And to see that happening coming from Donald Trump, as I said, this is not a great day for his administration. I hope, that the Supreme Court stays strong, realizes it's supposed to be representing the will of the people. But look what the precedents this would send. Essentially, as I understand the case, they are trying to say that since the EPA already determined that glyphosate is safe over a decade ago, that the EPA is taking on that responsibility. Therefore, we shouldn't be able to be sued. We should have an automatic liability from the approval by the EPA. Well, think about that. The reason Robert Kennedy Jr., I think, made it as far as he did in the campaign we ran, one of the most successful independent campaigns ever since Ross Perot, he ran on cleaning up corporate corruption. We know there's a revolving door inside of these regulatory agencies, FDA, EPA, CDC. We want to see them get rid of that. But what if this court makes this decision, what it's going to say is, if that revolving door is there, if we have enough pharma lobbyists actually working inside of government that they approve a product, or if we can fake our science or hide our science, which is what Monsanto has been caught doing, the major paper they referred to on the safety of glyphosate has been retracted this year, saying it looked like Monsanto had manipulated the science and put their own writers on that study. And so the paper eventually said, this looks like it's a fraudulent paper. So the one that they were standing on doesn't even work. But what are we going to do? It's not going to just be Monsanto. The Supreme Court makes this decision, then every drug that we usually see recalled, Vioxx, Fen-Phen, Johnson's baby powder, what about Oxycontin? Don't you think all of those products would say, hey, we got approved by the FDA, and since the FDA approved us, then you should never be able to sue us. We will never see a recall of another product in our lives, and we'll wonder why we're so catastrophically sick. And that's my final point. We are the sickest nation in the industrialized world. Where is American exceptionalism now? We have the highest rate of chronic disease, autoimmune disease in the industrialized world, and this is the sickest generation of kids we've ever seen. We've gone from 12% chronic disease in the 1980s, skyrocketing now over 50%. I think the CDC just reported 75% of kids in America right now would not be able to pass the test to get in the military because of their health issues. That is the greatest decline, to go from 12% chronic disease in our kids to over 50% in just about 40 years. That's the greatest decline in human health we've ever seen. So whether it's the glyphosate on our food, the vaccines, the forever chemicals, the plastics, we want, as MAHA, we want Robert Kennedy Jr. investigating all those things. And I wish Donald Trump would stop wasting time on trying to protect corporations and just hand the keys back to Robert Kennedy Jr. and let him do what we've asked and what we supported him doing from the beginning.
Amen. I hope we clip that and share that, because that's the greatest summation of the current problems we're facing in the United States in the health movement. Thank you so much for that, Del. Just final thoughts here. There were some glimmers of hope in the oral arguments today. Chief Justice Roberts basically pushing, the defenders of Monsanto on why shouldn't states be allowed to hold your feet to the fire over cancer claims? Like, what? Why shouldn't they? Why shouldn't states be allowed to go right after you guys? So, how do you see maybe this playing out in the Supreme Court?
Look, you would have to imagine from both sides. I grew up as a progressive liberal. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado. I'm an environmentalist. I was a fan of Bobby when I was a kid. I was honored when I got to be his director of communications when he ran for president. But on the Democratic side, we believe that this is an issue. No one wants to see poison sprayed on all of their food. You shouldn't have to be, have a $100,000 a year salary and be able to eat organic food to protect your kids. Health should not be elitist, yet it is in this country. These are one of the reasons why. I think for those reasons, I would like to see Democratic-leaning justices look at it that way. And then on the other side, conservatives should be saying we believe in the free market and we should not be interfering in the free market forces that I've described here. And then you've added another part to it. We're talking about a federal decision that will override states' rights. One of the great things about this country is it's not Russia, it's the United States of America. And so there's diversity across our states. Right now, if you don't want to vaccinate your kids and still go to school, you don't live in California. You move to Texas. There's other states that meet, the things that you believe in. That's a benefit. Also, we can't make changes if government gets too far outside of our hands. The closer the government is, it's easier to reelect or fire a senator or an assembly member, especially on the state level. Think about the county level. We want even more power in our county level. What this is going to do is make it a federal mandate. Trump's done this a couple times. He's threatened to do this with the whole AI, that no state is going to be able to interfere with AI. Well, what is that going to mean for data centers if I don't want data centers? We want our states to have the power. That gives us the power. I think Donald Trump understands that on a lot of levels. He's talked about it. For some reason, he's got a blind spot here.
Del Bigtree, real pleasure to have you here. I hope people will share this far and wide. Really an incredible analysis of this situation. Thank you so much for your time. I know you had a very busy day out there at the Supreme Court today. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Del.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much for watching Redacted. We'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. It's totally free if you want to follow us or subscribe. And if we brought you any value at all, please consider sharing this video with a friend or a loved one on social media. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.